My fiancée told me her ex was non-negotiable during Christmas dinner, so I gave him my seat at the table permanently. The wine glass in Alina's hand didn't even tremble when she delivered the ultimatum that ended our 3-year relationship in front of 16 people. We were sitting at her parents' mahogany dining table, a heavy, polished beast of a thing that felt more like a courtroom bench than a place for a holiday meal. My parents were there, looking small and confused in the face of the Coastal Elite Theater being performed by Alina's family. In the center of that theater was Julian. Julian was the ex who never left. He was the soulmate turned platonic who attended every family brunch, helped her father pick out his vintage watches, and apparently had a permanent reservation in the life I was supposed to be building with her. I had spent months biting my tongue, listening to her parents lecture me on my primitive need for exclusivity, but that night, the pretension hit a breaking point. Elena stood up, her voice ringing out over the sound of clinking silverware, and looked me dead in the eye. She said, "Let me make this perfectly clear for everyone. My ex will always be a part of my life. He will be at our wedding. He will be at our children's birthdays. He will be in the delivery room if I want him there. If you don't like that, Ben, then you shouldn't marry me." The silence that followed was heavy, like the air before a massive storm. My mother looked down at her plate, her face turning a deep, embarrassed pink. My father just stared at me, waiting to see if his son had a backbone left. On the other side of the table, Julian actually smirked, leaning back in his chair with a glass of Pinot Noir, as if Head just won a long-contested territory. Alina's father, a man who viewed himself as a pioneer of radical emotional transparency, nodded solemnly and said, "It's about honoring the history of the heart, Ben. Don't be so small." I looked at Elena, really looked at her, and realized I was looking at a person who didn't actually love me. I was just a placeholder, a stable, high-earning accessory who was expected to pay for a life that Julian got to enjoy the best parts of. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I just set my napkin down, looked her in the eye, and said, "Okay." Alina's face broke into a triumphant smile. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd finally broken my traditional spirit and forced me into the evolved box her family designed. We finished dinner in a surreal atmosphere of fake cheer. Her mother started talking about the floral arrangements for the June ceremony, acting as if the verbal execution of my dignity hadn't just taken place. I played along. I was polite. I even shook Julian's hand when we left. But as soon as my parents and I got to the car, the mask dropped. My dad didn't even start the engine. He just sat there in the dark and asked, "Are you really going to let her do that to you?" I told him to watch the news next week. I didn't go home to our shared apartment that night. I checked into a hotel, and by 8 a.m. Monday morning, I was at my lawyer's office. We weren't married yet, but we had a shared lease, a joint wedding fund, and several deposits down on venues that totaled more than some people make in a year. I spent the next 72 hours moving with a surgical, cold precision. I called the caterer, the florist, the photographer, and the venue. I told them the wedding was off, because the contracts were in my name and paid for from my personal account, something Elena had insisted on so she could save her earnings for our future. I was the only one who could cancel them. I lost about $15,000 in non-refundable deposits, but it felt like a bargain for my freedom. By Wednesday, I had movers at the apartment while Elena was at work. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I left her the furniture we'd picked out together, the TV, and the high-end kitchen gadgets. I even left her the engagement ring on the granite countertop, right next to a printed copy of the cancellation receipts for the wedding. I didn't block her. I wanted her to see the notifications. The first text came at 2 p.m. The venue just called me crying about a cancellation. What kind of sick joke is this? I didn't reply. Then the calls started. 10, 20, 50 missed calls. My phone was a vibrator in my pocket, buzzing with the frantic energy of a woman who realized the ATM had finally run out of cash. I went to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. It was a stark contrast to the week before. No Julian, no lectures on emotional evolution, just roast chicken and quiet respect. Halfway through the meal, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite ring, it was a desperate, rhythmic pounding. I knew it was her. My dad looked at me and I nodded. I went to the door and opened it to find Elena standing there. Her hair a mess, her eyes red-rimmed. Her parents were in the car behind her, idling at the curb like a getaway team. Elena screamed at me, "How could you do this? You humiliated me. The invitations were supposed to go out tomorrow. My mother has already told everyone." I leaned against the doorframe, feeling a strange, detached calm. I told her, "You told me if I didn't like Julian being a permanent fixture, I shouldn't marry you. I realized you were right. I don't like it, so I'm not marrying you." Her father climbed out of the car, adjusting his spectacles as if he were preparing to give a lecture at a university. He marched up the driveway and said, "Ben, this is a massive overreaction. This is an avoidant attachment style manifesting as financial abuse. You can't just cancel a life because of a disagreement over dinner." I looked at him and laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in years. I told him it wasn't a disagreement. It was a declaration of terms. Elena set the terms of the marriage, and I exercised my right to decline the contract. If Julian is family, let him pay the deposits. Let him be the one who sits at the family table. I'm sure his evolved connection includes a six-figure wedding budget, right? The look on his face was worth every cent I'd lost in deposits. He knew Julian was a freelance creative who lived in a studio apartment and borrowed money for gas. He knew that without me, the lavish lifestyle they'd curated for their daughter was going to evaporate. Elena started to cry then, real tears this time, grasping at my arm. She said, "They'll stop seeing him, Ben. They'll tell him he can't come." I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to stand up for my friends. I gently unhooked her hand from my sleeve. I told her that the problem wasn't just Julian. The problem was that she thought she could disrespect me in front of my own parents and that I would just sit there and take it because I was traditional. I told her that tradition includes honor, and there is no honor in being a third wheel in your own marriage. I closed the door on them. I went back to the table and finished my dinner. But the drama didn't end there. Over the next month, the evolved facade of her family completely disintegrated. Without the wedding to focus on, Elena and her parents turned on each other. Her mother was devastated by the social embarrassment. Turns out, her modern views were only for show, and she was terrified of what her bridge club would think. Julian, the spiritual brother, disappeared within weeks. As soon as the luxury vacations and the high-end dinners stopped being billed to my card, his beautiful connection to Elena seemed to lose its spark. He moved on to another soulmate in a different city, leaving Elena to deal with the wreckage alone. I heard through mutual friends that she had to move back in with her parents because she couldn't afford the apartment on her own. She sent me a long, rambling email a few months later, filled with therapy speak about growth and unresolved traumas, asking if we could reevaluate our journey. I didn't even read the whole thing. I just hit delete. I realized that for 3 years, I hadn't been a partner, I'd been a project. I was something they were trying to mold into their image of a modern man, which apparently meant a man with no boundaries and an open wallet. Now, a year later, I'm dating someone who actually understands what a boundary is. We don't have ex-boyfriends at our dinner table, and we don't use pop psychology to gaslight each other into submission. My parents are happy the traditional way. My mother doesn't have to worry about seating charts, and my father doesn't have to wonder if his son is a coward. Sometimes I think back to that Christmas dinner, to the smug look on Julian's face and the cold ultimatum in Elena's eyes. I realized that okay was the most powerful word Eve ever spoken. It wasn't a submission, it was a door closing. And on the other side of that door was a life where I didn't have to share my seat with a ghost.